if you're after this or any of the recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel. John, we can put a link into that for folks if they haven't got to that as well. All right, we might kick off. It's great to have Andy Cooper with us tonight. Andy's coming to us from Wellington in New Zealand, so it's already past his bedtime at 8:30 p.m. So thank you for the at least the later start, Andy, or at least we're interrupting whatever you might be watching on television tonight. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to be with us. I've known Andy for 15 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
But wide range of experience in a whole pile of organizations, both in New Zealand, here in Australia, and in fact across the entire Asia Pac region. He is currently the head of strategic development at Skills Consulting Group. And he has been doing, he's also one of the co-organizers of WellyBAM, which is one of our sister meetups in Wellington. And he's been doing a lot in the AI space. He spoke at an AI conference a couple of weeks ago that I was also speaking at, and I just really like the I guess the viewpoint, or just the things, and he's been keeping up with this. So anyway, it should be a good sort of roller coaster of different technologies and things like that. So feel free to ask questions in the chat as we go through. We'll make this as interactive as we can as well. But thank you, Andy, for taking the time, and we'll hand over to you.
Cool, thank you. This is not going to be quite 40 AI tools in 40 minutes. Not quite there
Dang.
yet, but we're getting there.
Something to aim for.
Yeah, that name is already taken. So
yeah, patent pending.
Yes, so we're going to focus. So just for a start, I'm going to be using this tool here. I don't know if anyone's actually played around with it, but I just noticed actually that this company called Gamma has just recently been got actually quite a huge funding boost, and it's actually becoming quite well known as an alternative to traditional presentation tools. So I've been using this for probably 6 to 8 months, and I found it really good, especially for this topic, because things change so frequently, and it seems to work quite well for me to keep up with this world. So I mean, literally, I think I did a talk there. Craig mentioned this talk only a couple of weeks ago, but I had to update it quite a bit since that time, because as pointed out before, this world is moving so quickly. So anyway, we're going to talk about navigating, because it feels like that at the moment. It feels like you're having to navigate your way through this world of AI. So really, I'm going to focus on 3 things. Maybe get to the 4th one, the road ahead, depending on the time. Look at the main AI tools that all of you are probably using some of them. I tend to be playing with a lot of them, or most of them, just to sort of evaluate what's what. Talk a little bit about prompts and GPTs. Now, the key thing about GPTs now that's actually really changed things is that now that ChatGPT have come out with the new version, it's now available free. So all of you that didn't want to spend $20 to access GPTs can now do so, which is great. So now I can talk about GPTs, and all of you can actually play around with them if you haven't already done so. Talk about AI in the workplace. All of us, hopefully, in some way or form, are connected in a workplace. It's interesting comparing that from what I would do in a sort of home environment, and then comparing that in the work, and sometimes you find that there's a bit of a gap. So in my role at Skills, recently I've been tasked with setting up what we're calling an AI acceleration team, and so that's a cross business team that I'm helping to establish, where the goal of that is to actually get AI. Responsible AI by them, including all the governance policies and so on, rolled out across the whole organization. So we've already done some training for initially, but we're going to roll out a much bigger plan. And obviously Craig's going to be a key part of that. So anyway, that's the sort of main things we're going to cover. Let's just quickly start with, this is just high level, and then we'll go through some I've got some demos and stuff to look at as well, just sort of illustrate some of the points. So this just had to be updated last week because ChatGPT, I think someone mentioned before, a large number of these tools all had their big announcements over the last few weeks, and suddenly, so all of the landscape keeps changing. So if I did this 2 weeks ago, it's pretty well the same. So and I've tried to order them in like in my view in rank order, even though that's obviously a very subjective view. I've listed ChatGPT 4.0 being Omni, or I think that's what they now term. I still believe overall it's the best tool around, especially now that you can get access to it free. I think that's a really smart move. Although it does mean that for those of us who are paying $20 a month, we're actually now wondering why we're still paying $20 a month. Hopefully there's some additional benefits outside of the more extended use that we now get, which is pretty well the only thing you're getting for your $20. But I list ChatGPT 4.0 and have continued to list it as being the best overall, even though I do think there are some of these other tools that are better at some things, just because of its ability to do all things well. And it's just got better in the latest release. So one of the things that I have started using quite a lot, which a lot of people probably aren't aware of, and maybe because of your environment you can't really do it, is the data analysis component of ChatGPT. So that was just recently updated, and it's significantly better than it used to be. And before it was pretty good. Now the issue for a lot of people in your organizations is that you can't do anything useful with it because you can't load any of your information, and that's a problem for a number of these tools. If you're not actually able to get hold of the Teams or enterprise versions. So in my case, I've actually got access ChatGPT 4.0, the team version, which is what we're starting to look at roll out to a selected group of users. And that is the version that where the data is secure, I guess, in a sense where none of the data is available to be used to train. So it does mean we can upload some of our company information, which is now starting to be really interesting to start doing some analysis. The same applies for like the Gemini as well. So Gemini, and I'll talk about, I guess, with the strengths and weaknesses of these over time. So that was another tool that's Google's tool. So that was updated last week too. So it's a good tool and it's getting better. From what I see and hear, it's still not as good in many things as ChatGPT, in things like coding and in reasoning. Writing somewhat subjective, but it's I guess the big thing that Google's introduced is this really large context window, the context being the amount of information that it effectively can remember at one point in time. So ChatGPT currently is 128,000 tokens, which translates to is like 0.75 words, so roughly 100,000 words. So Google now on this latest release has come out with 1 million. So that's quite a lot. And in fact, they're now making available a version that's up to 2 million tokens. So in terms of size, that equates to like 2 million tokens, equates to like 60,000 lines of code. So that's a significant amount that can be loaded in at one point in time. So Google seems to be going down that path of allowing you to input very large data sets. Now, the downside of that at the moment is, again, that's all very well, but what about I'm in a work environment? How can I do that? So the only way you can do that with Google is if you're on one of their business accounts or enterprise accounts. So like with ChatGPT and OpenAI, they have commercial versions that allow you to input data and it to obviously be in a secure environment. So you only get access to that security when you pay for business or enterprise versions. So anyway, both. So ChatGPT, I believe, is the best tool overall because of its, I think, ability to do the basics well. They've obviously, some of you might have listened into some of the announcements that have happened last week. There's been controversy around some of that with the alleged use of Scarlett Johansson's voice, which of course they term Sky, for the new voice part of this. That hasn't been released, by the way, yet for ChatGPT, so you can't actually listen to any of those voices. But with that new model, what came with that, and for those of you who've been playing around, one thing that I've noticed is that it's significantly faster. So when you're running things, it just blitzes through them so much faster now than it used to. So they really improved the speed. They now have talked about it being multimodal by design. So that means that you're able to input not only words, but images and sounds and movies, and output in all of those formats as well. So that they used to have that somewhat, but it was effectively bolted in. Now it's all natively built in. So again, I think ChatGPT, how I look at it, and OpenAI are really sort of leading the way from a technology and advanced position at the moment. They seem to be like one step ahead of everybody else. Microsoft is benefiting that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. For those of you who are in organizations, you probably got access to Copilot, which is the Microsoft version of ChatGPT. That's what we have available here at Skills. It's okay. Microsoft does things to it that I guess they think improves it, and in my view, in many cases, it doesn't. But I guess they're trying to sort of target an enterprise audience. Now, the other tool that I haven't mentioned that's also, I believe, highly capable is Claude. So that wasn't available outside of the US for quite some time, but it is and has been available in Australia and New Zealand now for probably about 6 months. So Claude is a tool that I myself use most often. And it depends on the nature of your work. But the reason that I use Claude over all the other tools is that I find that its output in terms of what it generates from a text point of view is most usable. Quite often, it takes quite a bit of effort to get usable content from ChatGPT or Gemini. You tend to find there's a certain style that the chatbots have that's quite obvious. Claude, for whatever reason, is just better for writing. So most of the stuff that comes out of Claude is actually usable without having to spend a lot of extra time trying to sort of make it so. So that's why I've personally used Claude for a lot of my sort of research. And the other thing that Claude has had, even though Gemini now has more, it's had this large context window. So it sounds small now, but at 200,000 6 months ago was huge. Now compared to like 2 million, it doesn't sound a lot, but it's still enough from my personal experience to make it quite usable. It means that you can load a number of large documents and have those available for analysis or for summary or any other sort of main things you're using. So Claude is the one that if you haven't tried, that's actually really quite usable. Now, the one that the main one here, Claude Opus, is the paid version, but they have 2 other models, one of which is pretty good as well. That's free. So if you haven't tried Claude, I will recommend it. Anyway, I'll stop here just for a minute. Has anyone got any comments or questions before I move on?
So Andy, I think these are obviously the chatbots. Are you also going to cover the picture ones?
A little bit. I'm mainly going to focus on these ones because I think they are the ones that people use most of the time.
Okay. No worries.
So, anyone got any other questions? Cool. Okay, we'll carry on. So Perplexity is another one that's been around for a while, and it's now, if you haven't tried it again, well worth using for if you're doing any research. So some people talk about Perplexity being the next Google, although recently Google has come out with what they call the search generative experience. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's what they think is the next version of Google. So effectively what Perplexity does is, instead of giving you a list of 5 articles that you then look through, it summarizes those 5 into a consistent and easy use summary, and then it posts some questions below. So a lot of people are using Perplexity now instead of Google when they're actually doing research or trying to find out some information. So it's recently been, I think it's again given quite a large funding boost, and it's now known as officially as a unicorn company valued at over $1 billion. So clearly people seeing quite a bit of potential in what Perplexity is doing. So again, good one if you haven't tried to sort of use for that thing around research. So Meta have taken an interesting turn. So Llama 3 is their latest model. So these tools are, you can actually access them. There is a site called Llama. But the main thing that's, I guess, Llama is known for is that it's open source. Well, technically it's known as open weights, not open source. But effectively what it means is that you can download and run your own version of Llama 3, or you can run it from a range of sites. And I'll show you later on an example where it's run, where you can run it from this platform called Grok, which is super fast. So I got a raised hand. So Dominic, did you want to have a good question?
Yes. Sorry for my late question. I am looking for generative AI with local Australian knowledge.
Yep.
So I've been testing a bit around with Gemini, which to me, out of ChatGPT and Claude, was the best one. I had to write a research and development tax incentive application. And Gemini, to me, I think that it was trained in Australia. I'm not quite sure, but to me, that was the the one which gave me the best results in terms of, hey, this is our last research and development tax incentive application. I want to write a new one. This is what we wrote. This is what I want to do. And it literally gave me the whole application out of it, which ChatGPT wasn't able to do. So I'm about to go into a next project where AI does play a role, but it's about the construction industry in Queensland, and I was just trying to figure out if you may know which of these has kind of the best local knowledge of Australia.
Oh, good question. For a New Zealander. So, no, sorry.
All right.
No, I don't. And I guess the point that it's interesting about this is that one of this is a really fast moving, and it's a moving target. So, what you tried and what you got from ChatGPT a month ago is not what you're going to get now, because the model's been updated. So that's the thing that makes this tricky. It's far from stable. And so that's why in some ways you've got to, experiment at the moment and see. I had a good example myself where I had been trying to do quite a complex piece of work for one of our teams, and it just did not work on ChatGPT or any of the tools. As soon after I reran the same thing after ChatGPT updated to version 4.0, and it ran straight away. So this is part of the, I guess, this good thing and a bad thing is that whatever was current is can change quite quickly, and they don't always tell you when the models change as well. So, and someone else may be able to give you the answer about what's the best one with Australian knowledge, but all I would say is that it keeps changing as well. So even things could go backwards too. So what was good last week, if they updated the model, if they've changed the training data, then it may not. So it's tricky. That's a tricky area. But
Okay.
somewhat that's where perhaps using some of the other tools like Perplexity that are not based on training data, but actually are more like search engines, may be good ones to try as well, on the basis that they're more like a search engine where they're crawling up-to-date information. So depending on what they're actually looking at, they may be a better choice.
Okay, cool. Okay.
So Llama 3, some organizations will look at that because they are able to potentially install it. That's one thing that we may look at if we look at having a hybrid option within skills, is that we would go with a high-end model like Llama and run it within our own system on one of our, maybe on Azure cloud or something like that. So currently Llama 3 is the best open source. Then I come down to Microsoft Copilot. So who's got Microsoft available in your organization? Just quite a few people. Yep, that would be the default, because a lot of organizations might have Microsoft, and it comes free with the enterprise licenses. So most organizations, funnily enough, have rolled out Copilot. And I guess the other main benefit and value is that it offers data protection. So a lot of organizations feel safe, I guess, behind the Microsoft Copilot wall. So I state here how I see it, because obviously I'm trying to be somewhat objective. And while I do training on Copilot internally, it's personally not what I choose to use for some key reasons that Microsoft and all of you are using it, probably seen that, but there's some really annoying things that they have in the current version, like not saving your chats, so all the history is lost, having very small context windows. The amount of the size of the prompts are really small, and it's just can be erratic in its responses as well. So how I look at it for our organization is good. It's good as a training sort of tool, as in I think for people to sort of justify why they should get something better, they should be using and making sure that they're getting value from Copilot. But it to my mind, it's not currently at a really grunty level, and therefore from our perspective, we're looking at providing better tools for the more high-end use. Microsoft will change that, and in fact they do have the Microsoft 365, which I'll talk about later on as well, which I also have access to. Personally, don't use it very often, so it looks good in the demo as well, but personally don't find it that useful. And I certainly wouldn't recommend our organization spending the $800 to roll out the Microsoft 365 at this moment. It's a typical Microsoft 365, or sorry, Microsoft version 1 product. Now this one, Grok, has anyone tried this? I don't see any response, so I'm assuming not. But Elon Musk, bless him, has actually invested a lot of money in, and if you listen to him recently, it's quite interesting that he actually defines his companies as being technology companies. Like, for example, Tesla, which you would think of as a car company, he actually says it's actually an automation and AI company that makes cars. And so it's quite an interesting way of putting it. But he's investing significant amount of money into AI, and in quite a short period of time, Grok, which currently is only available if you've got a Twitter/X premium account, is actually got to be quite good. It's gone from okay to good. So with the amount of investment that's going in, I think this will actually continue to get better and better. I suspect it'll continue to only be available as a offering, you know, and as a way of keeping people paying to use Twitter. But who knows? Elon's mercurial enough that he might just make it available just to try and slight some of his competitors. Who knows? Another tool that I've just played around with recently is one called Ask AI. So it's a bit like Perplexity. It's a search engine. So another one, if you haven't tried some of these AI-based search engines, worth trying. But it gives quite good answers, and it's certainly better than using the normal Google. So Claude 3 Sonnet. So Claude is the one I mentioned before that I use most often. So Sonnet is the free version. And then we move down into the sort of the other one. So we've still got ChatGPT down here, but it's sort of, I wouldn't use it. There's no reason just about any more to be using ChatGPT. There are other better options that you should be or could be using. Okay, let's move on. So that there's there's plenty of sites around, but if you want to have one newsletter or one thing that gives you updated information on AI, then the Neuron is actually a good newsletter, and they have some good material on their site as well, which is worth looking at. So they actually do have a coming back to the question before, they actually do have I guess a curated set of information on other AI tools. So depending on what other things you may be interested in. So video tools. So Gamma is the tool that I talked about that I'm using here for slide decks. And that was how I actually found out about it, was from here. So again, there's quite a few other tools, 11 Labs, if you're into trying to sort of do voice as well. So 11 Labs is like the favorite one in there. So some of the music ones are not on here. Some of the ones that Craig and I like talking about, like Suno.ai, are also ones that are quite fun to play around with. So anyway, you can look at, I'll give the link to this, and you can go and look through and have a look through. There are some quite good products in here, but again, there's too many of them to know exactly which ones you might potentially be interested in for this talk. But again, have a look through. You might find something that's useful to play around with, or it fills a specific need. So just quickly, some other things. So what are people using AI for? Whoops. So these are just some stats that they probably broadly represent the main reasons why and what people are using AI for. So that, I think that hopefully that sort of resonates with you as well in terms of what you see. The one here, social and characters, is interesting in that, again, up until about 2 or 3 months ago, the second highest AI tool outside of ChatGPT was one called character.ai. And so that's like a persona site, effectively, where you go on there and chat with a whole bunch of range of different characters, and it was incredibly popular with youth. So that was one that was somewhat surprising for a lot of people, and not known by a lot of people, certainly my age, but very well known, especially in the US for younger people who seem to like chatting with fictional characters. It's a bit sad in a way, but maybe that'll improve with these tools, or maybe it'll get worse. In terms of what tools people are using, again, the Perplexity is one that might surprise you if you haven't used it, but again, becoming very popular, certainly amongst those using AI tools a lot. And GitHub, probably it's not great surprise amongst this community that GitHub is actually well used. And then it sort of drops down into some of the other ones, like even things like Canva and Grammarly. Are actually, funny enough, Grammarly more popular than Microsoft Copilot. John, you got a question?
Yeah, it's really surprising that Microsoft Copilot is so low, even though it's available for free to so many people. That's really surprising.
And this is this is one of these surveys that may not be statistically valid either, but But I guess on an aggregate global basis, if you think about how many Grammarly users there probably are, but and yeah, it's interesting. So other sort of stats that are somewhat, you know, one of the things that's a little disturbing is, you know, if we think about the age distribution, as we're getting into the older group, we see a very small number of active users. So that's going to be the challenge, I guess, we're going to face over the next few years, is how do we bring, you know, the older, and even here, I'm talking about people over the age of 35, which aren't that old. How do we bring these people along on this journey? So currently the major users are the younger, and no surprise. But it is a bit of, to me, a concern around the, you know, this sort of what seems to be like a divide that's starting to happen. The other thing that I was going to mention that, so this was a recent survey that somewhat conflicts with that, but I think this is just corresponding to work. But so Google and Microsoft, well, Microsoft owns, and sorry, not Google, Microsoft and LinkedIn, well, of course, LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft. They've just done a very large survey. You know, it was 75,000 people or something like that, a large number in the overall world. So these are some of the demos. I'm only going to run through some of them just because of time, but I'll send a link to this, and it has all these Loom videos, so you can just watch them if you want to just have a look at some of the tools without having to actually download them or use them. So Copilot, this is the one that we have access to at Skills. Again, sounds like many of you have, so I'm not going to show that because it's just plain old Copilot. It's okay, as I said, but you know, there are better tools around that I tend to use myself. So ChatGPT, the one thing that I'd sort of want to highlight about, so this was version 4 when I created this, but it still stands as well. The vision side of ChatGPT is undervalued. So this was just an example just to show that, you know, this is a really basic project, you know, Gantt chart. So, you know, don't shoot me for putting in a Gantt chart, because I know Agile people hate that, but the point more is to sort of say that you can take artifacts from all sorts of things, and with the vision capability of ChatGPT and some of these other tools, they can actually read and then provide analysis on them as well. So it's another really useful capability that a lot of people just don't think about or are not doing. Another good example for Agile people, like all of you good people, are often very much into your whiteboards and stickies. So that's another good example where you can use the vision capability of these tools to actually transcribe all of your whiteboards and so on. So I've used them quite a bit for that, and it does a really good job. So you can just take a photo of your whiteboard at the end of your class or whatever your workshop or doing, and then you can use AI. If you do, you've got to prompt it well as well to try and make sure that the prompt follows the order of your whiteboard. But again, it can do a really nice job at transcribing all your stickies and all your whiteboards. So another good example where the vision is now, I think, going to become really useful. But again, try it with these sort of things, and you know, I find that they're actually incredibly capable. I mentioned before about the data analysis. So if you haven't tried that, now you've got the free version of ChatGPT. So you can just play around with the some sample data. You don't have to put your confidential company data, but play around with that and just get an idea. So that data analysis will come to Copilot at some point. So you will be able to use it within your organization, or you can do like what I'm doing and get the enterprise or the team version of one of these better tools that allows you to actually do data analysis. But that's a really powerful I think, set of functionality that comes with ChatGPT, and now with Gemini as well. So Gemini just literally in the last couple of days have come out with a very similar capability to allow you to do data analysis within the model as well. And it's so much easier for anyone that did stats back at uni. You remember how painful it was doing all of that? The nice thing is it's like you just do it via questions. So you can remember the concepts, but you now don't have to remember all the horrible formulas and so on. So in terms of some of the other things, so Gemini, the one thing that, so Gemini is the Google version. So I've talked a little bit about that before. How I think about Gemini, and if you're a Google user, like if you're using the Google suite, then Gemini is the option, in my view, that you should go for. And that will continue to improve as well. So Google is embedding Gemini across all of its tools. So that's going to be one of the I guess the key advantages. So if you're using, all of the Google tools for work or for your own use, then Gemini is actually, in my view, but probably the best option. And it's probably worth paying the money as well to get access to the high models that that allow you to have to do the the $2 million tokens and so on as well. So I think there's some real advantages for Google users to stick with the Gemini. One of the other things that it can actually do as well is that you can actually edit. So I think this is the example where you can actually edit the example. So you've done your query, and then you decide that you want to expand on a section. So you can actually, in this case, we just selected one paragraph, and then we can actually to get it to ask to add more on that one area. So it saves you having to redo the whole prompt again. So this functionality, I think, has just come out on ChatGPT as well. So it's going quite good if you just want to extend or change one piece. So that's something that a lot of people don't know is available in some of these models as well. So Llama, this is the Meta one. So you can actually access it from meta.ai. So again, really good free version. It's the images are quite good on it. So again, if you haven't used it before, worth having a look at. And bear in mind, this is the one that can be, in theory, you could download it and run it on your own hardware. There is a smaller version that technically can run on your laptop, for those that were really interested. The other interesting thing is that because it's open source, so it's a little bit confusing because it's called Grok. So I mentioned Grok before. That was the Elon Musk. But there's another Grok, but was spelled with a Q. That's a hardware company. And they've actually generated or created this new form of hardware, which effectively, so that you see down here, calls LPU, Language Processing Unit. So they've created a special form of hardware that's designed for running language models, and the difference is that so because it's optimized for language models, it runs really quickly. So I'll show you this example. This is running Llama. So it runs, so you could see it ran at like 935.3 tokens per second. So that's like, doesn't mean anything maybe, but that's a lot. So if you did a normal query, you might get it coming out at about 100. So running at 900 is incredibly fast. So what we're going to start seeing over time is that some of these will speed up through the specific hardware like this Grok that is super, designed specifically for these models. And so yeah, they'll start to become a lot faster than what we've seen before. So talk about Perplexity. So this is what Perplexity looks like. So it's like it's like Google, but unlike Google. So it gives you the list of the sources, but then it gives you the answer. So that's what makes it helpful, is that you actually get the information that you're looking for rather than just the list of all the sources. But the good thing is that all of these sources are they're actual real. So if you click on those, it'll take you to the original article. So that they're not made up like you find on a number of the hallucinated examples that you get with some of the other tools. So that's why I would recommend using Perplexity for doing research, because you can accurately cite all the sources, which you can't do from the other ones. So this is the iAsk one that I mentioned before as well. So this is another search engine. It's effectively like the next iteration of smart search engines. So the difference between this one and Perplexity is that it tends to give you more information, and it often has, combines it with diagrams and so on as well. So it looks quite Google-like, but the main difference here is that it's giving you, I guess, the result rather than just a set of links that you have to scroll through. And then we get to Claude. So this is Claude, the one that I mentioned that I use myself most often. So its main advantage is, as I said before, that it's you can load a lot of documents into it, and it comes out with really quite usable content. So yeah, to my mind, it's the best usable tool around, not the best overall. Still think, as I say, ChatGPT still tops all the others. However, of course, that's my highly opinionated view, which will come down to you find what you need. So if you've got more Australian data on one site, then fine. The good thing is it doesn't really matter, and that it changes as well. The skills of getting and using these tools are pretty generalized, and that's where we get to the next section on prompting. I had a little bit here. So this is the Microsoft 365. So as I said, I've got access to that in skills, and it looks nice in theory. Like it can generate PowerPoints, from just a prompt. You can load a Word document and it'll generate your slides. It sounds good in theory, but what I've found is that what it comes up with is okay, but not great. So you end up spending a lot of time fixing it to make it usable. And I also find that the tools within things like Outlook that you would think would be really usable, they're not. I would still use Claude if I was doing something than the built-in tool in Outlook. For whatever reason, the output of it is not very good. It just doesn't sound very real. So again, I wouldn't spend the money. There's another issue that we as an organization face with rolling out with that as well, is that one benefit that it provides is that it's really good at finding things. So it really indexes information super well, and that's great in theory, but again, not so great in practice, because it relies on you and your organization having really clean and good data practices. So if you are like our organization, where you've got data scattered all over various SharePoint sites, and maybe the security on those isn't the best, then you don't really want to roll out this product, because it will search through all the folders it can get access to, and it will find things. So we've already had some examples in our organization where amongst the small number of people that have got this, they've found things that they shouldn't have. So that means that we have to go back and do a whole bunch of data hygiene before we even go near rolling this out on a wide basis. But as I say, I wouldn't recommend it from a cost point of view at the moment. But there's also that issue around data that's the one that was somewhat surprising. So in terms of prompts, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to point out, there's some quite good information available now on on the concept around prompting. So people talk about prompt engineering, which makes it sound very sciencey. I mean, these are designed as conversational tools. So in a way, we're actually just doing users a disservice by talking about it in terms like engineering, because that makes it sound like a computer tool, which it shouldn't be, and it's going to put people off. So maybe that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of old people in the older generation not using it, because they think it's, you know, they need to be a prompt engineer. Well, they don't. They just need to be good at constructing thoughtful conversational input, and being able to express things clearly, and with context and all of those sort of things. So yeah, that's how we're I'm trying to sort of re-educate people away from you know, thinking of this as super technical to more it's you know, you need to be logical and you need to be clear, but it's not super scientific, and a lot of it comes from just practice and experience. So anyway, there's some good I guess guides on this that there weren't before. So Google published recently a really good guide on prompting. Again, comes up with, you always find the very similar sort of messaging around what they think of and what they recommend you do in terms of prompting. So one of the interesting things that you see here, that the most successful prompts are around 21 words. So that's somewhat counter to, I guess, some of the wisdom that you might hear around from the prompt engineers that say you need to provide super long, detailed prompts. I mean, I think there is a place for that, but I guess what this research has shown is that it's not a requirement. If you are very clear and succinct, and you cover these 4 areas: persona, task, context, and format, you can get good output. Yeah, so there are some other things around. So Anthropic, Anthropic's the name of the company that creates Claude. So they've got a really good prompt library that's worth looking at. In terms of other things, so I just put a list here. So a lot of you are in the, well, all of you are in the Agile community. You know, there's some quite good, when I first started doing this, I provided a link to this definitive list of Agile prompts. I don't know it is, because I don't think anything like that exists, but there are some good examples in there that if you have, again, try and experiment. They cover a range of different scenarios that someone doing an Agile coaching role or a Scrum Master could adapt, and they do work well from what I've seen. So anyway, prompts, to my mind, overrated a little bit. The tools will get better and better, but there are some, I guess, some generalized principles that you can follow, and if you follow those, then you generally get a good result. So GPTs, so now, as I mentioned, you can all play around with them now because they're free. So that's a great thing, because GPTs, I think, are and can be quite powerful as a way of avoiding you having to write prompts all the time, and also being able to add information to things so that you can put your own information in. So it's a way of, you know, coming back to the point around Australian information. In a way, over time, this is how you'll be able to get around that, by augmenting you know, what they put into their data by adding your own. So you could put your own Australian information in a GPT if that was, you know, what made sense. So, you know, now that it's free, recommend you start looking around the GPT libraries. So this, for example, is a good one, Prompt Engineer Pro. So this just gives you a way of seeing how you can improve a very simple prompt. So it gives you the idea of, you know, how you can take some of those, I guess, good practices that I showed before, and then you can learn from what this comes up with. This is an interesting one, Enterprise AI Use Case Advisor. So this is where you can work it through. You know, you put in information about your organization, and it'll then give you some examples of how you could be using AI within your organization. Quite good example and quite interesting. Persuader Pro was one that I created myself. So that was a bit of a thought experiment, but I just took some, an HBR article that talked about how to create a persuasive pitch. And I created this GPT from that as well. And so it took all this good idea, and it now just, I can just put in, I can literally just type in, I want to, convince someone about a specific topic, and it comes up with a really nice format, and written in, in a very persuasive way. An interesting side note on the persuasion. So AI is incredibly good at that. So if you're ever wanting to try and think about getting a salary increase, or applying for a new role, or something like that, AI tools are very persuasive, really good at that sort of thing. So using a good prompt will get you a very good outcome. So I've used that quite a lot in my strategy role as well, and had a good success, because I have to do a lot of board papers and so on, and I've used that quite well to convince the board for various things that we've tried to do or want to do. So definitely can vouch for that. Big companies are using, so Moderna, most of you will probably heard of them from the back in the vaccine day. So they're significantly using these GPTs within their organization. So in this case, they're doing one that reviews contracts. So that's something we're looking at within our organization as well. So instead of you sending a contract to legal, you can review it yourself, and it gives you a list of things that you can think about before it goes to legal. So anyway, GPTs are really useful for adding your own knowledge. So we're just about out of time, so I'll just cover a couple more things before we sort of wrap up. So this was another study that was done last year, in terms of, so what are the outcomes that I guess people are starting to see? And, I think the main one that people talk about is productivity. So, and that will depend on your organization and the roles. But I think it'd be reasonable to expect that if organizations provide access and training, then somewhere between a 20 and 40% productivity increase is reasonable. So that's pretty significant if you think about it. 20% productivity increases a day or 2 days a week. So I think that's our path to 4-day weeks, if not 3-day weeks, is AI, from my personal point of view. What else? I wouldn't go past that. So AI roadmap, just quickly, just saying it's just zipping along. So this was state-of-the-art AI video generation just over a year ago. If you haven't seen it, it's Will Smith eating spaghetti, and so that was what state of the art was. And then Sora came along, and it's like night and day, and that's in the space of a year. And we see, so GPT-5 is probably coming out sometime this year, and that's supposed to be an order of magnitude better than what we've already got, and that's pretty good. And then Gemini 2 is already in training, so that's from Google, so that probably will come out, if not this year, early next year. And then we've got Meta coming out as well. So it's just continual. We're just going to see more and more more in an accelerated rate. So it is hard to keep up, as someone pointed out before. Claude 4 as well was coming out. So anyway, a lot to so look forward to. That's all a matter of opinion, but definitely a lot to expect. Also seeing smaller models as well. So Microsoft is now focusing on this whole tiny but mighty. So rather than these very large, expensive models, they're starting to really come down and optimize to come down really highly efficient small models. So this one, Phi 3 from Microsoft, is actually very powerful, but actually quite small in size. So that's another thing that's happening as well, is that they're getting a lot more efficient. The other big thing to expect is the concept of autonomous AI agents. So that is going to be, I think, probably this year we'll start to see those coming into fruition a lot. And so agents are, effectively provides the ability to run a full task. And it could be a set of agents working together, or it could be a single agent that carries out a full task. But this is really where a lot of these organizations are heading now as well, is actually pushing it away from an interface that you or I access to a totally autonomous system that can fulfill a range of tasks. So we're going to see that in things like call centers. We're going to see it coming into organizations fulfilling specific tasks. But we're definitely going to see this agent coming through big time this year. So Microsoft talked about that in their release this week. So anyway, I think they'll finish there. The other big thing that's also going to come in is robots, but we'll leave that for another day. So robots are coming as well. It's going to be like Terminator 3. I see there's just a new movie coming out on that before we know it.
Thank you, Andy. Lots of good stuff in there, and every time you've even added stuff since the last time I saw you give this talk. So there's even some new stuff in there I wasn't aware of. Look, I realise for many folks you might need to get away, but if you do have any questions, we do have a couple of minutes if anybody wants to ask any questions of Andy or share anything with the group. So raise your hand. Craig.
Yeah, I was just going to ask with that Claude, you mentioned you can load a number of documents to it. So do you load a lot of documents that may have conflicting views in them, and then ask it summarize where it conflicts and where it agrees?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly one of the best cases that you can get from the ability to load. Having that large context window that's exactly the sort of thing that's really good for. So this is the sort of thing where I see that this will become really useful in, I guess in the traditional software space is user documentation and that sort of thing. And if you think about what I said before in terms of the Gemini's 2 million loading 60,000 lines of code as well, the ability to to do that as well is going to be quite, I think, transformative for a lot of organizations. So yeah, it can definitely do that sort of stuff.
And with the free version, does that let you do it to a limited extent? Is that difference?
I'm not sure on the limit, but it's not the 200,000. I think it's 100,000. It's still quite a lot. That's like 75,000 words. It's still more than most people need. But those sort of limits are going up. In fact, I heard Google just recently talk about that. At some point, there'll be an infinite context window. So it'll be like effectively you can load as much as you like and hold it in its working memory for as long as you like. But to give you an idea, just so 200,000, I think no, actually it's 750,000 words is like all of the Harry Potter books. So that would be like finding one word in all of the Harry Potter books, and they can. So that's because they do this test called Needle in a Haystack, where they add a sort of like a dummy sentence in the middle of it somewhere, and they ask the tool to find it, and they're getting good at finding that sort of stuff. So it just shows you they actually do remember a lot of it pretty well. You do have sometimes find with really long things that you have to sort of coax it out a bit more, but it is really good at that type of thing, at comparing and contrasting and just making that real drudgery of summarizing, but accurate summary. So we use it. So another example that I'm using it for. So we use it for a lot of minutes as well. So that's another really good thing. That's probably actually the one really good thing that I get from Outlook's. You can do a transcript from your Teams and then summarize it. Those sort of things are really useful. saves a lot of time or not having that available.
Andy,
Thanks.
when you mentioned the context window or the tokens, particularly using the free versions, is that per query or is it per day, or how do they, like, at what point do they cut you off?
So the context is like this continuous sliding window, and it's effectively, think of it like a session. So the way that the free versions tend to work is that you get limited. So if you load a lot of content in, then it sort of eats into your effective quota. And the other thing about tokens is that it's input output as well. So when you load content in and then you get content out, that all counts to that token as well. So if you're doing large data sets in and out, then it sort of slides along and it does lose stuff.
Okay, but it's sliding, so it kind of
Yeah.
forgets what you had at the start. And because if you use ones like I've used the ones like Sora, for example, not Sora, Suno, for example,
Yep.
where you basically just get a bunch of tokens, and once you've used them, that's it.
Yeah, they're sort of like credits, I think they term. And that's just more of a sort of, that's the tokens and credits are slightly different, although I guess they're trying to equate to the same thing. But think of tokens as like it's working memory, and in it is like a sliding. So if you're doing a lot of data in and out, then you'll lose stuff from the beginning. And so that's one of the good practices that I sort of get into is summarizing, summaries of summaries, and start using those as a more efficient way of working when I'm trying to do things, rather than try and load huge big things in. Otherwise you will run out.
Cool, thanks. Any other questions for Andy before we wrap up?
No, all good. I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you, Andy. That was great. So
Cool.
I took down lots of notes. And are you going to make all of the links available?
Yeah, I'll actually do that now while I think about it.
Because there's some great references there that I'm definitely going to be spending some time going in and exploring. I like
Yeah.
the Neuron, looks like a really interesting site. Also Notion for
Yep.
the agile prompt engineering.
Yeah, that's quite a good one. Actually, let me just go into chat and I'll add so this is a link to that. So that's the nice thing about Gamma as well, because it's HTML based. It's just a link, so you can just go and straight into my talk and look at it, and access all the demos and the whole thing.
Yeah, so Andy, if I look at what you mentioned, the Neuron, that's a good portal actually, to access all the AI tools and the thoughts about the world of AI.
Yeah, they do a daily email, and they also have a YouTube channel, and they do like every 2 days they do quite an insightful talk. So if you're like an AI geek like me, then you tend to get like 5 different things every day, and often it's the same stuff. But if I was going to do one, the Neuron's good. They also have a free ChatGPT course that's good on their site as well. So if you want to get better at using ChatGPT, the course is a bit old, but the principles are still sound. So it's not that long, maybe takes 3 or 4 hours, but it does run through ChatGPT usage really well. So that's another thing that's on that site that's good.
Also find Neuron's usually the one that gets the news to you first. I don't know why, it's just the way where they're publishing from or whatever, but normally I read a Neuron and then I read it everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. But no, they're quite they've got quite a good they're quite amusing as well. So they tend to not, I think their humor works well for Australia and New Zealand as well. They don't take things themselves or the industry too seriously, and so they often have quite funny takes on things. That's quite good as well, because you do get, like a lot of things, a lot of hype in this space.
Really? All right.
So one last one from my side is, do you think Microsoft is going to bring back Clippy? So you can have this little paperclip in the corner and it says, "Oh, I see you're busy trying to write a letter. Can I help with that?"
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? I hope not, but maybe
John, that's harsh. John, that is really harsh.
Yeah, but maybe in that thing that Craig mentioned before, you've got that computer that's analyzing everything you do every 30 seconds. That they can't resist having the little paperclip jump up and give you advice. But it's interesting because Microsoft have put a lot of money into this, but so far, as I say, I think they're capitalizing well. Their share price is doing well from all the I guess all the hype they're creating. But if I'm honest about the tools that they're providing, they're not great at this point.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Please join me in thanking Andy for a great summary of the AI universe. Well done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Andy.
Thanks heaps, Andy.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll let
Thanks,
you go away. For everybody else,
Guys.
keep an eye on the meetup site. We'll let you know when the next meetups come along. If anybody wants to speak, we're always looking for speakers, looking for topics. So you don't necessarily have to be an expert. Just be something you learned and you want to share. So reach out to John or I if you've got a topic. Don't forget Lean Coffee. But on that, we'll see you for the next session. Everyone, have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
for inviting me.
Bye.
Thank you.
And
All right.
thanks for facilitating, Craig, and for organizing this one.